Good morning and hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Parenting 360 conversation on nutrition in the active years for children between years 6 and 11. After the incredible response to our early years nutrition a session which happened last month, it felt important to continue the journey into this next phase of childhood. As children grow more independent and spend most of the day at school, many parents begin noticing shifts. Returned lunch boxes, changing appetite patterns, increased snacking, spot schedules, pressure around food, and sometimes even early signs of puberty. So, in these years, food is no longer just about hunger, but it becomes tied to routine, emotion, performance, and even social belonging. As a parenting expert and a mom, I know that this stage can feel fast moving and sometimes even confusing. So today, it is not about perfection, it is about clarity, practical understanding, and reassurance. Each of our experts will share insights and focused segments, followed by a short audience question and answer segment at the end. So we'll begin. For the first segment, we have our pediatrician, because I feel that before we discuss behavior or routines, we should first understand what is happening biological in this age group of 6 to 11 years. We have Dr. Marwa with us. Dr. Marwa is a pediatrician and a mother who strongly believes in practical evidence-based child health. She's been trained at the American University of Beirut with over 8 years of experience. She currently practices in Dubai, guiding families through biological and developmental realities of childhood. So, Dr. Marwa, between the ages of 6 and 11, children go through growth spurts that may not always be visibly obvious. So, how do these phases influence appetite, food, and preferences and eating patterns, as per you?
Yes. So, as we all know, like children pass through many stages of growth in different age groups. Unfortunately, during this specific age group between 6 and 11, it's not 100% obvious to parents, and parents kind of forget that children also are exposed to this growth spurts. So it is very common. And first, to start with, you need to understand that the growth is not a linear line. Children, they do not grow on a daily basis. They grow in spurts. So they are always growing. There's always a steady growth, but there's a growth spurts in between. It's like a wave. So it's not like a linear line always growing. So this is very important. And I need to stress on this a lot because it really explains why these behaviors happen and why children tend to eat more during specific days or specific weeks. Okay, so first of all, as I said, it's a wave. So whenever this wave happens, this growth spurt wave, you tend to notice that the children are eating more, are snacking more during specific days or even for a few weeks, and then they're back to their normal routine. Sometimes parents attribute this to behavioral changes. They kind of forget that it's a growth spurt. Okay, so unlike babies, as I said, it's not 100% visible in this age group. It's very tricky. Okay, so the children in this age group, they tend to seem suddenly hungry. Suddenly they're snacking more for several days for no reason. So parents start to notice that they're eating larger portions of food or they're eating different types of food. Also notice that during this age group, the maturity of the taste buds also is also happening. So they tend to like snack on different stuff, or they ask for different type of food that they didn't used to like, or the food that they used to like now they dislike. So there's a variety in what they like and what they don't like due to the maturity of the taste buds. Add to that, during this age group, they are going to school, their personality is developing, they're being exposed socially to different peer pressure, to different groups. So all these environmental factors also, they shape what they like and what they dislike. So we notice there's also a change in this pattern. Okay, so their preferences will shift during this age group. So what I always tell parents is you need to not to push them, not to pressure them. Just make sure that you're offering a variety of meals, balanced meals throughout the day. And I really stress on this, especially with my children. I don't like to because I noticed during my practice and also my friends and my community, whenever you label food that this is a bad food or this is not good for you, and you put pressure on children, the opposite happens. So in my house, there's nothing like called we're not allowed to have chocolate. We're not allowed to eat fatty stuff or processed food. We eat from everything, but it's balanced. And I tend to focus to have a good relationship with food because I'm not focusing only on this age group. I always remember that after like 10 years, when they have the freedom to choose whatever they want. Will they choose the bad food because they were deprived from it when they were children, or will they do the proper choices? So I've really seen it on a personal level, as a person, what happened to me when I was a child, and from all my community and the people I know, and from children that come to my clinic. So whenever there's like a lot of restrictions at home, lots of pressure on what they're eating, whenever they visit a neighbor or if they visit a friend and they are offered chocolate, they're offered something, you see that the children are eating it with eager and with hunger, and as if they never saw this in their houses. And this trend, I really don't like it. So I encourage a balanced meal, better choices, and flexibility, simply.
Thank you, Dr. Marwa. That was insightful and I think an eye-opener. Now the doctor herself is saying that we should not kind of alienate from them not having the bad stuff that we say, chocolates and everything. We should give them in balance. And you did speak about, growth spurts when they eat a lot. But then there are also parents in this age group, with children in this age group, that worry that the child is not eating enough. So what are the reassuring signs that a child is actually doing well, even if even if their appetite fluctuates from day to day? Is there
Yes.
any tell
So,
signs?
yeah, so given that the appetite fluctuates on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, we have to look at the picture, at the entire picture. So I want them to reflect on what they're eating in general throughout the, let's say, 2 weeks, because children, they tend to balance. So if one day they're not eating some, let's say, a specific food group, they will balance it the other week or the other day. So their bodies tend to balance it. Okay, so we have to look at the overall picture, not only one meal or one day. So as I said, growth comes in spurts. It's not linear, and we should always take this into consideration. And whenever they're going to visit the pediatrician, the most important thing is to plot on the growth chart and to see the percentiles. So in general, how's the growth? Okay, not day to day, not meal to meal. So in general, how's the child doing according to his own percentile and to his own growth curve? Okay, so he needs to follow his own graph, his own curve, because it's affected by many factors, mainly genetics and familial factors. So when a pediatrician plots on the curve on regular visits, we can tend to know that the child is on a right track, or they need support, or they need something to pay attention medically to. Okay. Second, the most important thing is the energy level. So as long as the child is happy, active, playing, whenever mom comes to me and they tell me, I don't feel they're eating well. Surprisingly, most moms feel the same way, and they always feel that something is missing. They're not eating properly. So I tell her, as long as you have a happy, energetic, playful child, it means they're okay. All right. So we don't need to overthink about it or stress about it. And they need small portions from each food group to get what they require on a daily basis. So they don't need like big portions of magnesium, big portions of zinc, big portions on a daily basis. There are just trace elements that they need throughout the day, and they will eventually get it throughout the week with all the balanced meals that we offer. Okay, also, let's say, for example, a child comes to me with that looks that they have anemia, or that they look that they have some physical problem, physiological problem. I can tell from the hair, from nails, from the skin, they will have visible signs, okay? But as long as they look physically normal on physical examination and they're happy, it means that most probably they're getting all their elements. Unfortunately, sometimes we need some additional tests, especially for iron deficiency anemia, because it appears later. So that's why we do regular screenings for children, for ferritin, for iron storage, and for CBC, which is the blood test. So we have an idea before the symptoms actually appear. Okay. And so also, as long as the child is having stable moods and good behaviors, because when they're hungry, when they're not getting enough vitamins and enough food, they tend to be like emotionally unstable. They tend to be, they will look irritable all the time. So we can tell also from these signs. So as long as the child is overall, the well-being is okay, I tell the mom not to panic over numbers or over making sure that he's getting every single trace element, because they will get it.
Doctor, is there any kind of a specific time frame in which we should because once the vaccination is kind of over, which is like around 2 years, 3 years mark, we kind of just get a little bit relaxed when showing to the doctor, unless it's a medical emergency or in flus or something like that. Do you recommend that there should be like a blood work timeline that we should get for our kids,
I
especially
recommend
during
not
this active age group?
Yes, I don't recommend like routine blood tests unnecessary, but I do recommend routine visits to the pediatrician. Unfortunately, as you said, once the 4 or 5 years of vaccination are done, they forget about the pediatrician. And also note that during this period, the pre-pubertal period, so they need to be also followed up. Because let's say they come later when there is no puberty, when they are having obesity problems. So that's why the daily or the follow-up, routine follow-up is very important. And the pediatrician will decide if a lab test is required or not. But there's no like specific like every once a year you need to do a CBC. To be honest, on a personal level, I do prefer, and for my own kids, I do routinely blood tests at least once a year just to see what's going on. But it's not like recommended by guidelines unless a pediatrician notices on a physical exam and proper history taking that the child is not eating well, something is wrong, then we refer for blood tests.
Okay, that brings me to my next question, which is like, how can parents differentiate between normal appetite fluctuations during growth phases and patterns that require actual medical attention? How do we, because as I said, we are not very observant on a timeline where we should bring our children to a pediatrician
Yeah.
on a routine basis. So yeah.
Yes. So there are some red flags that the parents can notice at home. Most parents, they notice a decline in the school performance. Okay, they're not concentrating, they're not focusing in class. So this is one of the signs. The energy level drops, the physical activity also drops. The child tends to be more fatigued. They don't like to engage a lot in things that require physical activity. So these are like some red flags. Also, if they, of course, they suffer from any organic problem like recurrent abdominal pain, recurrent vomiting, diarrhea, these require a visit to the pediatrician. Also, if they're having, I want to stress on something. If they're having like mealtime stress, so every time you offer a food, they become stressed. They refuse foods, 100% they refuse them. They have like sensory aversions from specific types of food. That's when we need to dig more into the causes. And most of the causes during this age group are peer pressure. They are bullied at school. They get affected by their environment at school. That's when we need to dig more and also seek medical advice to see if there's something going on that is preventing them from eating. And the most red flag that I would say is a sudden drop in weight. As I said, when they visit the pediatrician on a regular basis, they can tell you, the pediatrician can tell that there's a sudden drop on the curve. That's when things are becoming red flags. Because sometimes, to be honest, sometimes we have weight loss, we have night sweats and fever that we discover it's cancer. So that's also like a parent should always be aware that a sudden drop, unexplained drop of weight, a decrease of appetite, like 100% decrease of appetite, not the fluctuating pattern that we talked about. There's a long period of time that the child is refusing to eat. There's the obvious drop in weight. They're not active. They're very fatigued. That's when we really need to seek medical advice urgently.
Thank you. That does give us an insight because a lot of times as parents, we kind of miss seeing all of these signs, maybe because they're going through a lot of peer pressure and a lot of society pressure and things happening around them, even academically for that matter. But yeah, I think we should keep a close watch where all of this is concerned. So my next question is around the same thing, around the peer pressure and how things are affecting globally when it comes to food and food quality and nutrition. So we are seeing signs of puberty appearing earlier in some children. Is there a connection between, as per you, between nutrition, body composition, or dietary patterns for the early pubertal onset?
Yes. So puberty, let's define puberty. Usually pubertal signs will appear at the age of 9 to 14 in males and the age of 8 to 13 in females. Okay. The factor that determines when puberty starts is number one is the genetic factor. Okay. Although these days we are, of course, definitely seeing puberty coming earlier because of the different environmental changes and the food related stuff as well. However, genetic factors and familial factors remain the number one determinant of puberty. Okay, so we see if the mom had her puberty earlier, that the daughter will get the puberty also earlier. So that's the dominating factor. However, of course, the change that we're having, especially with what we're eating, the processed, highly processed food, the high amounts of fat, the endocrine-rich food that we're eating full with chemicals, also the chemicals that we apply on a daily basis to our children, all these change the hormonal game inside their bodies. So that's definitely going on. Especially that we're seeing also increase in obesity in children. So this is the number one also change that's going on. The increase in adipose tissues, which is fats, will also change the hormones, especially leptin in the body, which will give like a message to the brain that we should start puberty because we have enough fats. So the threshold of fats is reached, and now you can start puberty. Because usually, especially in females, the main determinant of when to start puberty is the hormonal levels, the adipose tissue, and the fats. So once the body thinks that we have enough fats to harbor pregnancy and reproduction, that's when the signal is sent to the brain that you should start now the puberty. Okay, so definitely the increase in adipose tissue, the metabolic diseases that we're seeing in children, and obesity is changing the game. As well, don't forget that the fats produce estrogen, which is a hormone also that will make the breast increase and become bigger, especially in females on an earlier age. So all these are changing also puberty definitely, but we should not like focus on only on food, because mostly all the things that are around us, especially the genetic factor, are the main dominant. Okay.
Yeah, I really feel even, the increase of screens, they are not
Definitely.
letting the kids be more active as they should be,
Definitely.
or
Of
like
course.
we were. So I think
Yes.
that increases obesity as well. And of
Sedentary
course,
lifestyle.
yeah.
Yes, and it will increase the insulin resistance as well. All, they are all related to each other.
Okay. Another question was, how important is gut health in this age group, particularly in relation to immunity, concentration, and sustained energy during school hours, because they are mostly spending their time in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of studies ongoing still about because it's like a new emerging thing in medicine, like the importance of the gut microbiome or the gut health. So they found a very close link between the gut health and the brain. So they call it the gut-brain axis. But they're still doing many studies about that, to be honest. What we know is that around 70% of the gut microbiome is responsible for immunity. So it's really integrated into immunity. Because these microbiomes, they will affect the brain, and they will affect the secretion of hormones in the brain, including like serotonin, dopamine. So they're all related to each other. What else? So in general, like a balanced gut microbiome, it will support the immunity in general, and the immunomodulators, and the formation of these immunity cells. As well, it will affect also the absorption of nutrients. So the gut microbiomes, or the bacteria in the gut, will eventually affect also the nutrients that are being absorbed. And these nutrients will definitely affect the general health of the child, the immunity, and the brain development, and all the neurotransmitters. So they are integrated. We don't know yet exactly how they're integrated, and many studies are still under process in this matter. But what we know, that we should focus more on fiber-rich food, on things that are not highly processed, all these things, and proper hydration as well. So this will affect the gut microbiome and will affect the general health of the child eventually.
So if I ask you as a mom for a second before as a doctor, what are the things that you do to increase gut health as a mother?
Yes. Yes, so there are a lot in the market of things promoting for like things that you should take or give. I think it's all like under marketing for the time being, and unless the real studies show that they actually work. As a mom, to be honest, the one thing that I focus is do not give unnecessary antibiotics, because they will affect the gut microbiome. Second, focus on proper hydration, focus on a healthy, balanced diet and meals. That's the one thing that we should, the most important thing that we can do. High in fibers, rich in calcium and iron, all this food, I offer them in a balanced way. That's the maximum that I can do.
Thank you, Dr. Marwa. That was very, very insightful. And uh, this was very helpful, especially for us to understand how growth and activity and hormonal shifts influence appetite and food behavior. And now that we understand what is happening inside the body, let's explore and move on to the next segment where we know what is happening emotionally and behaviorally in daily life. So in ages 6 and 11, food is rarely about just hunger, like we all know, like Dr. Marwa has established. It also becomes connected to regulation, routine, and autonomy, culture, and even belonging. So let's discuss that aspect. And I'd like to introduce and invite Anushka Gokani for this segment. She's a functional nutritional consultant. She's also a mental health educator and a nervous system coach. Her work bridges food, emotional regulation, and nervous system health, helping families understand how physiology and psychology intersect in everyday childhood experiences. So, in this age group, what do you think? How do food habits begin shifting beyond physical hunger into emotional coping or control within the family dynamics?
So, I think family values play a huge role when you have parents who eat a certain way, their children kind of pick up on those traits despite how parents want to inculcate habits. So it's very important that as a family to be consistent with your values in terms of how you look at food. Um, and then I think another thing is that food brings a lot of comfort. So emotionally, we associate certain foods to our childhood, to when a child is sick and their mom makes them some foods. Those are also comfort foods. So we really like to see how a child is eating and what foods they go for. Usually, when a child goes for more carbohydrates, we know that it's an emotional source of eating. It's also a source when they need a lot of energy because it's a quick energy booster. So that also makes a huge difference. Um, and we do see children who are stressed at school come home and eat a lot. So that's also something that Dr. Mara mentioned, is that when there's bullying, there's a lot of stress in school, we do see that coming back as eating a lot more or under eating at home as well.
So, we need to really pay attention and to pick up the cues that the children are leaving behind. Again, uh, connection parents. That's very important to see those little behavioral changes. Anushka, the next question is that many parents notice that children seem especially hungry after school. And how can we differentiate between true hunger and emotional fatigue or nervous system dysregulation, as we call it, after a long day? Because the line seems to blur. As a parent, you can just, I mean, you're confused yourself. This is such an age group where they are tasting independence and they are forming strong opinions. So what is your take on that?
So children are born as intuitive eaters. They know when they need to feel hungry. They know when they're full. And based on adult portions and society portions, that intuition in eating changes. So when kids are in school, firstly, woken up very early in the morning and they've sometimes eaten a breakfast, sometimes they'll just drink something and rush out, or sometimes some kids don't even get a meal until they're in school or eating during a shorter break. So what happens here is that we need to understand that when they're waking up in the morning and they haven't gotten a good meal, they're going to have sugar crashes through the day, and they're going to be very tired. Another thing is that when they're going to school, there's not a lot of movement happening, but there is a lot of brain usage happening. So there's not enough fuel for the brain to work. So when they come back home, one, they're in a space of comfort where they know that they're safe to eat. And then the second thing we see is that that's when they're supposed to be hungry, actually, because they need refueling. So I would say always have a very nice, warm, filling meal for your child as soon as they come back from school, because they don't just need that fuel, but they also need the comfort. And like Dr. Marwa said, is that it is kind of a wave. So some days you see the appetite has changed, some days you see that the appetite has increased exponentially. So it's just important to go with the flow. And what I like to do with my clients is just have healthy snacks on hand. So if they're still hungry after their post-school snack, they have something that they can just grab and eat, and you know that that's healthy and available.
can you give us some examples of healthy snacks? Because as parents, it's very confusing getting store-bought snacks because they're easy and they're convenient. But are they healthy or not? And what are the kind of healthy snacks we can keep around the house, maybe that is of usage, of good usage to us?
Right. So I think my go-to is dates with butter and sea salt, or dates with nut butter and sea salt. So the dates give you stable energy. The butter slows down the glucose absorption, and the sea salt helps with hydration. So if you have 2 or 3 pieces, it builds a lot of satiety where the child feels full. So that's a great snack to just throw in at any point of time. And you can actually have a big box where you just make these little pieces and stock it in the fridge. So it becomes a grab and go. Another thing that I like to do is play around with cottage cheese. So you can, add your own toppings, you can blend it, you can add it to yogurt, and you can make a smoothie jar, and then you can just add your toppings. So we know that children love autonomy. They love to be able to feel like they're in control. And often we see pushback at home because they want that autonomy as well. So what I like to do with kids, especially toddlers, and especially this particular age group of 6 to 11, because they are fighting for that autonomy, is to have toppings ready. So you could have a berry mix, you could have a chocolate mix, you could have, there's the whole kunafa like chocolate trend, so you could have that mix, and you just basically give them the same base and you can just keep adding the toppings. So it allows them to be creative, it allows them to enjoy making the meal and build a good relationship with that meal. So that's a really good option for snacks. Yeah.
Amazing. But having said all of that, we are also seeing a lot of kids uh, getting obese, and obviously with obesity comes the next bad thing. I'm calling it bad because I'm trying to regulate this with my children. Is sugar, diabetes. A lot of children are being seen getting diabetic. So that is my next question. How does blood sugar regulation influence mood, focus, energy levels, and behavioral responses across the whole day, especially the school day? And how can we, balance that out? Because, as you said, their activity is decreasing, and but they are eating. They want to snack. They want to be they want to be in charge. They want to take their decisions, even eating wise. So, what is your take on that?
Right. So blood sugar is extremely important because it dictates a lot of the functioning of the body. And it definitely dictates how the brain responds to the environment. So the way it affects mood, focus, and energy is that you see these spikes in behavior and in energy and in focus. It's not stable. It doesn't have to go up the chart or plateau, but it has to be like, let's say, a calmer wave instead of a hurricane, for example. So in the morning is when whatever the child has can spike the blood sugar extremely high. So a lot of times kids who have, chocolate milk and they leave the house, that's very high in sugar. And or kids who eat a banana and leave. Now, a banana is healthy in many facets, but when you consume something that has quick absorption in the gut, like when you wake up in the morning, your gut is empty, so your digestive fire is very strong. So the first thing that you eat is going to be absorbed very quickly. So when you have a banana, the first thing that your body is absorbing is the glucose content in it. So at that time, the child is energetic, they're ready, they're, ready to take on the world, they're excited for school. They reach school, and an hour later, we see that they have a glucose spike that has dropped. So this makes them feel sleepy. This makes them feel irritable. This affects their focus, their memory, their ability to interact with their friends or in a learning environment. Then the same things happen through the day. Another thing is if sleep is affected, or if you have rushed mornings, they've come up with this thing called rushed morning syndrome, right? Which is extremely anxiety inducing to children. So when you have that, your cortisol is peaking, which is the stress hormone. It's peaked extremely high. So blood sugar also affects the way that cortisol functions, and they go hand in hand often. So when one has a spike, the other one automatically follows as well. So we also see that being a big factor. And when you mention obesity, right? So there have been studies that have come out, and a lot of pediatricians talking about this actually globally, where they're saying that obesity actually begins with nourishment in the toddlerhood stage, and how that really makes a huge difference to when a child is 6 to 11. We feel like we're just happy that your toddler is trying variety and, eating all kinds of foods, and they're just easy. You take them out and you give them like a whole bowl of French fries because it's just convenient or it's easy. But what's happening is that these are building blocks. The first 36 months of a child are building blocks to how their body is being built. So we need to have a stronger start. And I also really liked what Dr. Marwa said about not categorizing foods as good and bad, because developmentally, children don't have the ability for impulse control, right? So, and as adults, all of us want to do things impulsively as well. So if we have difficulty, I think it's a huge expectation to have for children to be able to identify or restrain themselves from certain foods. So my belief is eat everything, but have an order of eating food. So you start with fiber, then you go to your protein and fats, and then you eat your carbs. So that regulates a glucose spike. So you want to give them fries, that's fine, put that on the table. But maybe start with other foods or have a rotation that goes on. So these are really important values, I would say, that when a family inculcates, it builds sustainability instead of focusing more on trends and diet culture.
Can you think of maybe a couple of breakfast options, like you spoke about, sugar spike in the morning, some easy breakfast options that we as parents can give our kids that doesn't, cause them a sugar spike in the early hours, and they stay controlled on their sugar levels?
Right. So eggs and avocado is great. Gives you stable energy. This is for the kids who actually enjoy breakfast and have the time in the morning. And then for kids who don't enjoy eating, who are just more of drinkers, we have like a good drinking community where kids just want a glass of something to drink and they'll chug
My
it and
child, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So a lot of that also is about dysregulation. They need more time to get into the day. But unfortunately, we have to go to school, so that there's no space for that. So for those kids, I love blueberry and walnut in kefir, and you just blitz up a smoothie, and that's a great thing to drink. Blueberries help with mitochondrial function. They're antioxidants. They don't spike your blood sugar, and they're very good for the brain. And when paired with walnuts, they're a superfood for memory and learning and focus. And then when you give them kefir, you're giving them fats, you're giving them some sort of protein. It also has carbohydrates in it, and it's great for the gut microbiome. So you're waking up the gut as well, and you're feeding the gut first thing in the morning. So these are two options that I would say are great for almost every child.
Thank you so much for that. I'm sure a lot of us are going to be benefiting from that. Moving on, we are also seeing early signs of puberty, like I discussed with Dr. Marwa as well. They appear early in some children. And from a nutrition and nervous system lens, are there any specific dietary patterns or food exposures that families should be more mindful during these years of 6 to 11?
So, seed oils are definitely something that I would want to run away from. They're there in almost every household. They're there when we go out to eat. Of course, when we go out to eat, we don't have that much control. So what I usually tell people when I go out is I'm allergic to seed oil. So can you cook this in butter or olive oil, please, for me? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I would definitely say seed oils are one thing that we want to just eradicate from our kitchen. Um, Another thing is that I believe that we need to lower our carb intake or eat carbs to make them complex. So what do I mean by that? when you're cooking a carbohydrate and you're eating it hot, most cultures like eating rice hot, and I love my rice hot, right? So so what happens when it's hot is that firstly, there's no fiber coming out of this. So it's not slowing down the digestion. It's absorbing the sugars first completely. So whether you have carb or sugar, it all breaks down to glucose. There's no difference in that. So we want to make it complex. What does that mean? That it takes more time to digest in the system so that you're getting more nutrients from it. So when you're cooking your carb, you want to cook it, then you want to cool it, and then you want to reheat it. When you do that, you allow the carbohydrate to start acting also like a fiber. So it slows down the absorption of that carbohydrate into the body and actually makes it healthier. So that's one thing. Another thing that I tell everyone that I work with is we want to cook our carbs in meat stock so that all of those carbs are absorbing all of that nourishment that the meat stock has to offer. You have glycine, you have your protein, you have good fats. So even for picky kids, rice cooked in meat stock and just butter is a great meal. So it's as simple as that. We want to basically make our carbs more complex so that they are much healthier to eat. And that's one of the things that I do see with girls who get their period very early is that their diets are very high in carbohydrates. And another thing is reducing plastic use and endocrine disrupting hair products like soaps, shampoos, fragrances. We see young girls who are 8 and 9, right? They have makeup on, they have used all of these perfume like infused products. Okay. And what that does is that clogs the lymphatic system. It gives wrong signaling to the endocrine system. It puts a lot of load on the body, chemical load on the body. And that triggers estrogen production as well. So what we're actually seeing is that our products that we're using daily have so much perfume or fragrance in them that they are triggering that excess estrogen production and they are triggering early puberty in girls, especially. So I would always look at the ingredients of a product that I'm using and focus more on essential oils for young children. If they want to smell good, you have alternatives, so look for those alternatives. So these are genuinely some things that can sustainably be added into a household and be worked on.
Thank you. I'm sure that's going to make a huge difference, because we very mindlessly kind of are okay with our little girls. Mine is 8, so very mindlessly, okay, fine, you can maybe put this gloss on or put mama's perfume, it's fine. But yeah, this is an eye opener. Thank you. And another thing was that if early puberty does begin, how can parents approach conversations at home in a way that reduces anxiety and supports understanding both for themselves and their children?
So I think that conversations should happen because a mother is going through her period in general. So that kind of helps with this is what happens to mama, and this is what happens to girls as a conversation, one, to build tolerance, and two, to build respect. Those are conversations that should be made very normal generally. Now, when we have early puberty, let's also understand that a girl's brain is actually not developed enough to understand the intensity of what puberty brings or
Right.
getting a period. So it is in a lot of ways trauma inducing for a girl to have her period very early on. So what I would suggest here to do is to get her whatever support she needs. If she wants to talk to someone, if you want to take her to play therapy, if you want to have many conversations about it, to make her most comfortable. All right. And then the conversation should always be empowering. The conversation should always be around what is comfortable for her. Because imagine a very young child of 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. Anything under 11 for me is early puberty. Um,
Right.
so imagine a child that young going through the kind of menstrual cramps that all of us have had at one point of time in our lives. It's excruciating. So if your child has their period under 11, it is very important to go and get help from somebody like a nutritionist, a pediatrician, any kind of healthcare provider that you align with in order to support her development better and her hormones. Because once you have begun puberty, the girl's hormones are very complex, and you need to eat for your hormones as well, because the hormones and the brain require similar foods. And when they are constantly at work and they're not being fed according to their cycle, it affects the way that they are in school, the way they are socially, their self-esteem, and the way that they think about themselves as well. So especially with early girls who have puberty very young, we also see that they feel very odd in a classroom to get their period because their peers don't understand that or the intensity of it. And they also feel very much like a black sheep and like something is wrong with them because those conversations are not normalized, and other children don't have the ability to understand that either. So I think that asking for support from a professional and just aligning your life better is actually a sign of strength in parenting, because we can't do it all. And it is
Absolutely.
important to ask for help.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we should also kind of normalize the conversation around it, you know. It's imperative to do that because in a lot of households it's still a hush hush topic or this is not for you topic. But I think as I feel that as children turn 8 and 9, they should be kind of given an idea that there is something called puberty and this is how it affects girls and boys. It's very necessary, even for the even as a support system for their peers, you know, as their friends maybe who may be going through them. Thank you. So in a multicultural school environment like those in Dubai, like we have, how does peer perception influence what children feel comfortable bringing or eating to their lunch boxes?
Sorry,
That's a major concern.
yeah, I think Dr. Marwa had something to add on to the
Oh, I'm
puberty.
sorry, Dr. Marwa, I couldn't. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
يعني long time ago we used to like educate girls about periods and puberty only like before she gets her period or like when she gets her period. But nowadays I believe that we should start the earlier the better. Since they
Yeah.
are babies, we start to introduce them to their genital areas in a very biological, simple way according to their age. And we're not gonna explain menstrual cycle to a girl that's 1 year or 2 years or 4 years. We're gonna introduce her to the fact that this is your biology, you are a girl, I'm gonna change your diaper, I will take her permission to change the diaper. So all these talks from early on, from 1 month old, they make a difference. So I always tell the parents, don't wait until puberty or pre-pubertal to like shock them with the truth. Just start the earlier the better in a very biological, simple, age-appropriate way. Okay?
I agree. And in fact, even not only with girls, I also feel, you know, with our boys reaching the same age, this conversation should be normalized. They should know what their peers or classmates may be going through, helping them build that sense of compassion as well, you know. That is
Information
important too.
from internet, because nowadays they're exposed to social media. So let them get the proper educational information from us.
I agree, 100%.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Marwa. Yeah, so Anushka, again, since we are in the day and age now, especially living in a place like Dubai, which is multicultural, how does this peer perception or influence, as we call it, you know, how does it make children adapt or feel comfortable in bringing their own lunch boxes, because it's a cultural thing, you know. I have noticed this with my daughter that she doesn't really want to take Indian food because she says it won't be well taken in her school by her peers, obviously. So how can we generate a conversation around it, or if there is something for us parents to learn about, you know, from your lens, please shed some light on it.
So I do see a lot of trend eating in young children.
Yeah.
So it's like one kid brings something really cool, and that has become a trend. And if you have something that's not that, you're not cool enough. So I think a lot of these things are consistently seen, especially with this age group, especially from 9 years onwards, is what we see. Until then, the kids are a lot more lax. And then there's also how foods smell when you open up your box, right? That makes a huge difference. So there is as much of a melting pot of cultures there are some children who haven't been exposed to every culture. So their reactivity and their impulse takes over, right? So it's like, oh my God, what is that smell? I don't like it. And then by the time they've said that, the person who's opened their box wants to close it back. So it's a very reactive response that we see in a lot of children. I think that the way it can be talked about at home is to really understand from a maybe ask the five senses question. So it's like, so how was your lunchbox today? What did it taste like? What did it smell like? How did it feel? And when you do that, you start getting facial expressions from the child at like the smell like. And then you can always ask, okay, how can we make this better? What happens here is that you may not be able to change everything like it's a restaurant, but what you can do is make them feel like they have a say in what they consume and also to just get that out of their system. So I like doing the five senses question. And then another thing is to sometimes um, give them, like, I know that with your daughter, you do a meal plan every week. So I think that that makes a huge difference because this age group is constantly going to fight for autonomy. So when you're sending something to school, if their friend has something more fun, sometimes that lunchbox is forgotten. So it's kind of about creating and building anticipation and excitement for that meal that's coming for you, which is where I also see a lot more consistency with kids. And that's
I'm going
about
to
it.
ask you a more specific version of this question now,
Yeah.
because as parents, I think all of us here, as children gain independence, how can we parents support autonomy in eating while still maintaining structure and boundaries, not only in school, but at home and even at events or, outings?
Right. So, I think when you work with them on a meal plan, they understand what meals look like. And then it's just about giving them the autonomy of what meals they want to have. What I also like to do is create, a table where it's, for example, there's a list of proteins, there's a list of fiber, there's a list of carbs, and there's a list of fats. And then it makes it easier to just pick and choose and kind of make a little bit of a meal. So when that's there and you gamify it into a puzzle, this reflects deep into their subconscious where when they go out, they look for things that are more of a mix of things, even if they're trying things out. So it's basically like making it a little more scientific for them, giving them a structure. What happens with kids and meals is often they're too tired or often they're too overwhelmed. So when you ask them, what do you want to eat? And they're really hungry, or they eat everything, but it's very overstimulating and overwhelming for them to understand that. So when we give them options or structure in a structured manner, they have something to fall back on. So if today it's on the board and these are the things that are available, I can choose, oh, I actually want to have yogurt and berries. So I have that. When I go out, I can actually look for yogurt and berries. So this builds a lot more sustainability to kind of have a chart at home where you use the foods that you eat in your culture and in your household. It's not a generic chart. It's what works for you. So I think that really inculcates those habits. And also when they go out, they can apply those things as well.
Well, this has really worked out for me because I'm big into making lists. So I have made these meal plans. We have outing meal plans. We have Fridays and weekdays, weekends meal plans, and then we have a weekday meal plan. And as a parent, I have noticed a great sense of stability while constituting their autonomy in that. So, I really feel that that worked out for me. Maybe parents try it out. Maybe it works for you. And also, it gives them the sense of control that, okay, I get to choose. It's more like a menu, but it actually works for us better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also
So,
want to say,
yeah, sure.
sorry,
Go ahead, go ahead.
that kids actually, no, despite the pushback that you get, kids actually thrive when there is structure. So structure that looks slightly autonomous, structure in general, having routines, kids thrive in that space. So their moods are much better, their energy is also more stable, they're able to understand their feelings a lot better. So we want to really prioritize structure. So it's not like going to army camp is not what I mean, but just having a way that the household works that also has all the values. So structure is extremely important for children despite the pushback.
And even for us, structure is important even for us, I believe. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree totally. And now, one of the major concerns that we parents have is screen time. So, with increased screen exposure, especially after school, how can families encourage mindful eating habits, mindful snacking habits without being overtly restrictive?
Okay. So I think this is a little tricky because it really depends household to household. There are some kids have parents at home, some kids are with their nannies. So it really depends on what that household looks like. But I would say one thing is please don't create a habit of eating in front of the screen because that creates a passive eater, not an active eater. Children need to eat with their senses because that is what actually helps them grow and their brain develop. When we have a passive eater, first thing that we're doing is we're building a habit where they're not actually understanding what's going into their mouth. They don't understand what their if their body is full, if they're hungry, all of those cues are gone. And it also becomes a big habit where they will only need the screen to eat. So when we have a passive eater, we also see an increase in anxiety in children. We also see them not having stress resilience because it's like it's a zombie. The brain functioning has just completely dipped. So appetite fluctuations are very common here. We see more pickiness developing. So that's one thing that I would say is always opt for active eating. Even if your child is running around or doing many things or playing a game, that's fine because they're actively looking at their food and they're eating and they're engaging in conversation. But we want to stop the passive eating. So that's definitely one thing. So you negotiate what screen time looks like. If when they come back from school, right, they want to eat something, they can first sit down and eat and then they have their screen time, but have screen time negotiated around food. Another thing that I would say is that blue light should be taken very seriously. So when a child is watching TV much later towards the evening after sunset, that's not good because the brain thinks that it's still day.
Right.
So it affects their melatonin production as well. It affects their quality of sleep. It affects their ability to sleep. And anything that's out of balance causes anxiety or stress in a child. So that's where we also see a lot more pushback when it comes to sleeping in the night as well, because they're on the screen all the time. And even with school, with homework on the iPad, so all of those
Yeah.
things need to be scheduled in a way that it's done before dinner time. Because the older they get, once they cross 11, they're going to have more to study, they're going to have more assignments, they're going to be on the screen much later. So I would say to negotiate and cut that down to before sunset, definitely, and make that a habit.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering all of this and basically for helping us understand the emotional and the nervous system behind food choices and how families can approach sensitive and transition among all of this with calmness and clarity. We're going to be moving on to our next segment now and to the everyday execution, uh, what this actually looks like in lunch boxes and in real life. For this, we have Shikha Chanana, who is the founder of Li'l Nomsters. Li'l Nomsters is a Dubai-based kids-only cloud kitchen designed to make practical nutrition more accessible for modern families. Drawing from her own experience as a mother, she focuses on creating fresh, preservatives-free, customized meal that balance nutrition with what children realistically eat. Um, so
Hi
because,
everyone. Hi. Thank you for
yeah,
the lovely introduction, Sakshi.
thank you, Shikha. Thank you for coming on in because, intention is one thing, but picking and preparing consistently is another. And thank you that you're providing one such medium for us
Yeah.
moms.
Yeah, it's
Um,
difficult, but yeah, we're trying.
yeah, so I'll just begin asking you the questions. So
Yeah.
uh, tell me, as someone working closely with school-going children's meals, what patterns do you notice in what children genuinely are excited to open and eat from their lunch boxes?
I believe it's just not the kids, even we as adults, when we take the, tiffin to office, we like it more cleaner, more, divided in compartments. And, any messy thing, we also don't like it. So it's with the kids the same thing. So we try, whatever we send, it should be neatly present. It should be divided as per if there is a curry, it should be in different box, or if it's a rice, it does matter for them, because when it gets clumsy, they would not like to eat. And when it is soggy, or when they become, it's like, no, it's very, it's very soggy, we can't eat, so we just avoid it and we just gone to eat something fresh. So we try to do that with our lunch boxes, and it does
Right,
matter. It does matter in
of
that case.
course. Right. And how do you balance the convenience with nutrition when you're creating meals for children, that they would eat consistently? I'm sure
So,
that must be a challenge.
so for with us, when we connect with the parents, they themselves tell us like what they want more. Like either they want carbs more, or either they want protein more, either they want fiber more. But with us, when we send the meal, we make it a balanced meal. We send them salads, we send them sides, we send them fruits, we send them, a proper protein meal. So that's how we managing it. But kids being kids, they don't like to have salads. They don't want. So what we do, we give them we did give them options in their lunchbox. So if they don't want to eat fruits, they can take salads. If they don't want to eat salads, they can take sides. And we make sure that every meal which we send, like if there is a salad, there's a protein in it. So if they're not eating salad, they can take up a main meal in it. So in any which ways, they're gonna get all the nutrients which they need in it. In it. So we try to do that ways.
Thank you. And now this brings your expertise here. What practical shifts you suggest that families can, inculcate in their everyday life that reduces their reliance on ultra processed snacks without feeling overwhelmed, both the parents and the kids?
So I think the approach which families should take up when they are eating together, or when they are bringing up the food on the table, it should be one family meal. You know, it's a big platter kind of thing where everything is there on the plate. There is burgers, there are pizzas, there there rice, there protein, there chicken, everything on the plate, and then we tell them, we are eating this. What do you want to eat out of it? So when they see we are eating chicken, they would love to try it because we are eating with them. So I think everything depends on the parents. Everything depends on how you are introducing the food to a child. So if I'm eating a burger in front of them, obviously the child will be more curious to eat a burger. Now the burger which I am eating, it cannot be a flour one. We can make it from pulses. We can change it, we can change the ingredients of it, and we can just eat in front of them and make it like, wow, it's so yummy. And obviously they will be like more curious, because curiosity in kids is too much higher than the adults. So we can change
Yeah.
the alternative, the ingredients, we can change it. We can use oat flour, we can stop using corn, these breadcrumbs, we can use oat breadcrumbs. So there's always a healthy alternative. But if we push them first to a child, they will never take it. You have to try it in front of them and tell them that, oh, it's yummy, it's healthy. That makes more difference. That's create a difference in child and a parent. And they would love to, like Anushka just said that, there should be a family who will be more focusing on it. So it's always a parent's contribution towards it. I completely agree, parents doesn't have time these days, but once they choose one meal a day, like if not breakfast, if not lunch, let's do dinner together. Let's sit together. And this way they will reduce the screen time also. When you are sitting on a table, which we do, like as a family, we do. We sit on a table, we create a platter of 5 6 things which has a salad, fruits, multiple things, and we do keep one junk food on our table to
Okay.
make them realize that it's not a bad food, but it's not even a good food. But if you want to have it, you can have it. It's up to you, because we are also having with you. So that's how we can change the pattern in kids while eating, and this has to be done from adult, because as we say, adults are more responsible towards the kids, and kids cannot take a choices themselves. They can, peer pressure can make them do the choices. So why not parents do that? Why not parents make a pressure on them and make them eat what they're eating? So it should be one family thing. So we do this with on weekends, like you make a weekend meal plan. So we decide, like, on weekends we can sit together, we can make all the dishes together, make them eat, make them feel the texture, make them feel how it is, and it is up to them. We don't pressure them to eat. We just tell them to try. If it's fine, good, then you can go ahead. If you don't find it good, it's okay. We can try something new another time together. So it is a together. It's an initiative from both the ends, kids and parents. We can't just blame kids on this, and we can't actually blame on kids, because the choices which we are making them do is influenced by our choices. You know. So
I totally agree. Yeah.
so that's what I believe. Like, even in the school, we are not there to control them, but the lunch boxes which we send them has a lot of variety. Lot of variety, as in we give them parents a choice of making a week meal plan, and we tell them, like, you offer, if something is new is there, let's just introduce. It's okay. Let the lunch box come like that only. We don't mind it, but send them. Just have an exposure to it, and don't force that exposure. Just let them experience that exposure. So I think that will make a difference in coming years with the kids' choices and the effects. So it's a mutual initiative between parents and kids.
Absolutely. I can't stress enough on modeling the behavior that we're expecting. And
Yeah,
what you rightly said is that, let's just first make changes in ourselves and then let it trickle down to the kids.
true.
Great. So now, from your experience, what taste profiles and textures do children between years 6 to 11 naturally gravitate towards? And how can parents thoughtfully incorporate those preferences at home while still maintaining nutritional balance?
Okay, so let's say I'll just talk about four main junk foods what kids eat: burgers, pasta, noodles, and let's say pizzas, right? So we
Mm.
can, for burger buns, we can change it to the pulses, or we can make it more with almond or the other flour, from just changing up the ingredient in the bun. Make it more protein based, make it, or either make it more carbo based, but not a flour, like a maida we call it. We should not do that. Second, pasta, which we personally do, is a cheese pasta. We do chickpea pastas, we do lentil pasta. Just replace it. Just replace the ingredients which you're using, but you're eating pasta. So that gives them the comfort to eat. There'll be first a negligence to eat, because there is a change in the taste, but sooner or later they will develop that taste too. But we are eating pasta in front of them, so we are eating junk with them, and their mindsets work like that. It's pasta, wow, it's gonna be a good food. Similarly with let's say pizza, we do multi-grain flour use for the base. We don't just use the maida thing. So just I think again I'm saying, just the ingredients we're gonna change, everything will be same. Like, they will try to inculcate that flavor, they will try to experiment with those flavors, and one day they will be used to it.
Amazing. And personally for me, and I got a validation from Anushka on our last session that I used to mix in all the broths together, whatever I'm cooking, be it pasta sauce, be it dal, be it everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, that kind of, worked for me as well. So yeah, I agree with just switching the ingredients to a more healthier options. Great. That was very insightful, Shikha. And now we have come to our last segment,
Mhm.
which is the audience question and answer. I have a list of questions that I have picked up from our chat box from parents, and I'm going to ask you for one by one these questions. So the first is directed to Dr. Marwa. Uh, Dr. Marwa, A mom wants to know that my child eats very little at dinner but seems fine otherwise. Should I be worried? If my child is very active in sports but does not seem to eat more, is that a concern?
Yes, so as we mentioned, there are some red flags that we need to monitor. For example, during the visit to the pediatrician, let the pediatrician plot on the growth curve to compare previous visits to this visit, to see if the child is following the growth chart of his own or no. And as long as I said, as the child is active, not irritable, academically in the school, has good performance, and is eating at least a good meal per day or per week. In general, the week looks good to her. That's fine. If sometimes at dinner they tend to become picky eaters, so it's the approach would be decided at the pediatrician if the child needs extra follow-up, if there's something wrong. But in general, as long as the child is happy and healthy and playing sports, academically good, that's nothing to worry about.
Thank you. Anushka, I think you can take this one. This is a parent has asked that one sibling eats everything and the other is selective. How do I manage meals without without comparison or pressure? Wow. Yeah.
So let's understand that feeding, the act of feeding requires a lot of safety. So when one child is not feeling connected to their food, it creates a lot of pickiness as well. So sitting with them and the one who eats and gamifying, maybe planning meals or plotting meals would actually be very helpful, because it becomes a more encouraging thing where they both get to try new things, or they both get to swap ideas, and one day could be sibling one meal plan, the other day could be sibling two's. So making it more gamified actually builds a sense of safety because it's playful, it's fun, and it offers autonomy. So that's something that you could definitely try.
Okay, and this one, I think both the doctor and Anushka, you both can take it, your stance on this. We are seeing puberty begin earlier in some children. Once those hormonal shifts begin, how do they impact mood, confidence, and emotional stability? And what role can nutrition play in supporting resilience during this transition? We can take it from Dr. Marwa first, and then maybe Anushka can join in.
For the nutrition part, I will leave the floor to Anushka to answer that part. But for me, as I mentioned, the earlier you start the talk with your children, the easier the transition will be. And the most important thing is to build a trust where they can feel like they are emotionally connected to you. They can express their feelings freely to their moms or their dads. Any caregiver figure at least. So the emotional support is the most important thing, and it's built with trust, with over time, not suddenly. And you cannot expect a child to suddenly open up to us at the age of 9 or 8 or 11 when we didn't build this trust from early ages. So it's a gradual thing.
Great. Anushka, would you like to jump in this?
I agree with everything she said. I think it's very important to consistently build trust and safety in that dynamic. Also, another thing is that when a child hits puberty really young, there's a lot of shame attached to it as well, where they feel like their body is failing them or there's a disconnect with the body. So I think that this is the time where parents should really prioritize helping the child build a better connection to understanding their body and being confident about what their body is doing and normalizing their body as much as possible. Because we see these children grow up and they start developing a lot of disconnect with their body. And then we see a lot of PCOS and endometriosis also that is correlated to this. So that's definitely something to look out for. Another thing is nutrition 100% plays a role in supporting children who have hit puberty early. They need more nutrients, they need different nutrients. It needs to be cyclically fed in order to support their cycle, each 4 phases of their cycle. So that's something that I would always tell parents is you don't have to go to a nutritionist every week, but at least go once a month or once in 3 months to just make sure that the child is healthy, and the entire family is being supported, and it's more sustainable.
Thank you, Anushka. Well, another question. I think Shikha, you can take this. So she wants to know that how can a burger be made more better?
Better as in the taste wise better, or the better as in the nutrient wise better? The two
Well, I think
questions which,
she hasn't mentioned that. Maybe you
yeah.
can answer both.
So the better as in the bun, as I mentioned before, we can use pulses, we can change the flour in it, depending upon the density of bun which your child prefer. There are kids who needs very heavy burger, there are kids which they need very light burger, so we can change that ways. And about the ingredients, like the patty which we use inside depends on what patty. If it's a vegetarian, then we can add a lot of, we can use a butter squash with a lot of veggies in it and make a patty out of it. If we want to healthy way, and and if you want in a tastier way, so we can just use let's say the veggies or just the potato in it with hidden veggies in it. So, and we can ask them what toppings they. So, as Anushka mentioned, we can always make a DIY all food also. So, we can keep onions, tomatoes, cucumber, jalapenos, anything in front of them and tell them to make their own burger. So, this way they will get excited also. So, ingredients I've already mentioned how we can change that. And about the toppings and the flavor, let's give it a DIY to the kids so that they can be more involved in what they're eating. And obviously, we don't have to feed them. They will get excited when they're making themselves. It make them more curious to eat and how they have made it. So I think that's the best way to eat a burger then.
Or best way is to order from Li'l Nomsters, because I've had one
Yeah,
of your burgers
that
and it's
too.
really
That too.
amazing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. As we close today's session, I want to sincerely thank each one of our panel experts, Dr. Marwa, Anushka, and Shikha. Thank you for bringing medical clarity, emotional depth, and practical insight into one cohesive conversation. Um, Nutrition in 6 to 11 years is just not about what children eat, but it's also about growth, regulation, confidence, and long-term health patterns that quietly take shape during these formative years. And to every parent who joined us, thank you for caring enough to ask these questions. Like I always say, parenting does not require perfection, it requires awareness. If today gave you even one moment of reassurance or one practical shift, then this conversation has served its purpose and is well worth it. At Parenting 360, our goal is simple: to replace confusion with clarity and pressure without informed with informed confidence. So thank you for being part of this community, and we are hoping that you continue to be a part and hop in more of these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.